Some wounds don't bleed, they echo. They linger for decades in silence, shaping how you love, how you trust, and how you react. Have you ever felt like your emotions are too much, or that you're too sensitive, too needy, too broken to be loved? Carl Jung believed those weren't flaws, they're clues, traces of a child inside you who was never fully seen, held, or heard, and that child doesn't live in the past. They live in your nervous system, your relationships, your fears. This video is not a magic fix, it's a path. A return to the parts of you that learn to stay silent, just to survive. We're going to walk through 5 powerful psychological steps to begin healing your childhood wounds, based on Jungian psychology and emotional integration. And if you want to go deeper, I've left a special link in the pinned comment with an ebook that can guide your next steps towards self-acceptance and healing. Tap subscribe, because this journey is too sacred to walk alone. Let's begin. Why do some pains never fully leave us even after decades? Why do we sometimes react with intense emotion to situations that seem minor, as if a forgotten part of us suddenly takes over? According to Carl Jung, it's not just memory that lives within us. It's the child we once were, hidden in our unconscious, quietly influencing our present reality. Jung believed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Many of us move through adulthood wearing masks of strength. We build careers, form families, appear stable from the outside. And yet beneath all that, there's a whisper, a faint feeling that something's missing, an ache with no name, a tension that logic can't fix. Often this comes from wounds we never fully acknowledged, a gaze we longed for and never received, a scream we silenced so it wouldn't disturb the house, a love that felt conditional, only offered when we behaved, succeeded, or stayed small. Childhood wounds are not always the result of visible trauma. Sometimes they're born in subtle absence, the lack of emotional presence, the constant pressure to be strong, the feeling that we were too much. We adapted, we became achievers, perfectionists, people-pleasers, and we called it growth. But real healing doesn't come from ignoring the past. It comes from understanding how the past still breathes inside us. This journey is not about blaming those who raised us. Most did what they could with what they had. It's about recognizing that something in us was hurt, and that the adult we are today is the only one who can truly tend to that pain. To begin healing, we must first turn toward that forgotten self, not to relive the pain, but to finally offer it the presence it never had. This isn't about being broken. It's about wholeness. And healing begins when we finally stop running from what still needs to be seen. Recognizing the wounded child. Within, the first step toward healing is not action. It's awareness. Before we can fix, we must see. Before we can soothe, we must acknowledge. There is a child in you, not metaphorically, but psychologically, emotionally, energetically. This inner child is not some abstract idea. It's the part of you that first learned what it meant to be loved or unloved. It's the one who formed beliefs about safety, worth, belonging, and shame. Carl Jung understood this deeply. To him, the human journey wasn't just about growing, it was about becoming whole. And wholeness, he believed, required facing the shadow, the forgotten, denied, or wounded aspects of the self that we buried long ago. That shadow often contains our inner child, and most of us have spent a lifetime trying not to feel what that child once felt. We've been running from echoes of sadness, of fear, of not being good enough. We've rationalized, minimized, or buried those old emotions under labels like childish, dramatic, or irrelevant. But silence is not healing. Avoidance is not peace. The child remains hidden in the unconscious, waiting. And when triggered, it is not the adult who responds, but that child, the one who wasn't heard, the one who still doesn't feel safe. This is why a simple rejection from a coworker can feel like devastation. This is why an unanswered text can spark panic. Why criticism leaves us spiraling. These are not overreactions. These are unresolved reactions, reactions from wounds that were never named. Jung taught that the unconscious governs us unless we bring it into awareness. So when we feel out of control emotionally, it's not always irrationality. It's the inner child crying out in a language we forgot how to translate. But how do we begin to recognize this child? Start with the signs. Do you fear being abandoned in relationships? Do you constantly seek approval or validation? Do you explode over small things, then feel ashamed? Do you sabotage your happiness just when things are going well? Do you feel an unexplainable emptiness even when life should feel fulfilling? These are not personality flaws, they are signals. They are the voice of a part of you that was once too small to speak and too scared to stay silent. Recognition is the bridge. It's the moment we stop gaslighting ourselves with phrases like, "It wasn't that bad," or "Other people had it worse." It's the point where we say, "Yes, something in me was hurt, and that matters." This is not about becoming a victim, it's about becoming a witness. It's about stepping out of denial and into truth, gently, compassionately, but honestly. When you recognize the wounded child within, something shifts. You begin to understand your behaviors not as flaws, but as strategies, survival patterns that once kept you safe. The perfectionism, it kept you from being criticized. The silence, it kept you from being punished. The constant busyness, it kept you from feeling the sadness you weren't ready to face. Every coping mechanism had a logic once, and every one of them protected that inner child. But the child is no longer in danger. You are no longer defenseless. The world may still be harsh, but you are not who you once were, and that means you can stop surviving and start healing. Recognition is not easy. It requires you to revisit places you've spent your life avoiding, but it is also a profound act of love. Because to recognize the wounded child in you is to say, "I see you now, I believe you, and I won't leave you behind again." That, in itself, is healing. Jung didn't believe in quick fixes. He didn't promise that we could erase our past. What he offered was far more powerful: integration. And integration begins here, with a pause. A quiet moment where you no longer run, no longer resist, no longer deny. You sit with the child, you let them speak, and you listen not to judge, but to understand. That is the first step. It is not flashy, it is not dramatic, but it is sacred. Giving space to what was repressed. When you've recognized the wounded child within, the next step is not to fix it, it is to feel it. In a world that taught you to stay strong, to be composed, to keep going, choosing to feel is a radical act. And yet Carl Jung reminds us that what we do not feel, we do not heal. Many people believe healing is about moving on, but true healing is about moving through the layers of grief, shame, fear, and longing that we buried in order to survive. The child you once were didn't just disappear. Their emotions, the ones no one had time for, the ones too big for your small body, were tucked away, swallowed in silence. They didn't vanish. They became part of your nervous system, your default reactions, your relational patterns. And here's the truth. What is repressed does not die. It lives in the background, shaping who you are and how you love. It's the quiet sadness behind your smile, the anxiety that clings to your joy, the anger that erupts when you're ignored. So what do we do with all that buried emotion? We make space for it. Safe space, gentle space, non-judgmental space. This doesn't mean falling apart or wallowing in pain. It means letting go of the armor, long enough to say, "I'm ready to feel what I once had to deny." You may feel the urge to rationalize it, to minimize it, to say, "That was so long ago," or "Others had it worse." But the body doesn't keep time the way the mind does. A child's heartbreak doesn't expire. It waits. And when you finally sit with that pain without trying to edit it, fix it, or justify it, you give yourself the chance to metabolize what has been frozen for years. Jung understood the power of emotion that had no outlet. He wrote, "What is not brought to consciousness comes back as fate." This is not superstition, it's neuroscience. Repressed emotion becomes reaction. It shapes your behavior in ways you don't understand until you sit with it long enough to name it. So what might this look like? It might be allowing tears to fall when a memory surfaces. It might be journaling the words you wish someone had said to you. It might be revisiting a moment of fear, not to relive it, but to reframe it with the eyes of compassion, because you are no longer that child. Now, You are the one capable of providing what you once needed: comfort, patience, protection. This is not regression. It's reintegration. The child inside doesn't need to be pushed away. They need to be welcomed. And that welcome begins by making room for their pain, not dismissing it, not rushing past it, just being with it, without conditions. You don't need perfect words. You don't need a therapist's couch, though that can help. What you need is presence, a quiet willingness to sit with what aches without trying to escape it. And yes, it will hurt. But so did holding it in all these years. The ache is not the problem. The problem was the silence. When you allow repressed emotion to rise, you begin to dismantle the unconscious prison you've lived in. You start to notice that your triggers have roots, that your shame has history. And in doing so, you take back your power, because now you're no longer reacting blindly. You're responding consciously. You're not exploding out of nowhere. You're understanding, more, this is old pain showing up in a new form. That moment of clarity, that is transformation. And slowly, the emotional charge loses its grip. The panic becomes a whisper. The sadness becomes tenderness. The fear becomes space. Carl Jung believed in embracing the whole self, not just the light but the shadow. And much of our shadow is made of emotions we were told not to feel. Were you told you were too sensitive, too needy, too dramatic? Those labels became internalized, and you learned to swallow emotions that were perfectly human. But sensitivity is not weakness, neediness is not failure, and expression is not shameful. These are wounds, and wounds deserve care. So now ask yourself, what have I been carrying in silence? And instead of turning away, turn toward it. If it's sadness, let it be sad. If it's fear, name it without flinching. If it's longing, feel its ache. You are not fragile for feeling, you are powerful for finally allowing. This is the work, not glamorous, not quick, but holy, because what you hold with compassion heals, what you shame persists. This is your chance to begin again, not by becoming someone new, but by meeting the one you left behind, the one who didn't need fixing. Just someone to say, I see you, you matter, I'm here now. Rewriting the beliefs that pain. Built every child grows up building stories. Stories about who they are. Stories about what love means. Stories about what they must do to be safe, accepted, or simply noticed. But what happens when those stories aren't born from truth, but from survival? Carl Jung taught that much of what shapes our adult personality isn't conscious choice. It's the shadow of unresolved childhood beliefs. Not beliefs we chose, but beliefs that formed us. When your emotional needs weren't met, whether through neglect, inconsistency, or criticism, you didn't conclude, my caregivers are incapable. You concluded, I'm not enough, because children don't analyze, they internalize, and from that place false truths are born. I must earn love. If I'm perfect, I'll be safe. My emotions are a problem. Needing someone makes me weak. I have to keep people happy or they'll leave. Do these sound familiar? These beliefs don't live in your logical mind, they live in your nervous system. They become the lens through which you view everything. Relationships, career, even your self-worth. That's why you might feel triggered by small things. Why approval feels like oxygen. Why rest feels unsafe. Why boundaries feel like betrayal. Why intimacy feels both deeply desired and terrifying. None of this means you're broken. It means you were programmed by pain. The wound shaped the story. And that story became your identity. But here's the hope Jung offered. Anything constructed by the unconscious can be reconstructed by awareness. You do not have to live out beliefs that were never truly yours. So, how do we begin? We start by questioning the script. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Ask yourself, what did I believe I had to be in order to be loved? What parts of me did I hide to feel safe? What emotional needs did I learn to silence? You may discover that much of who you became was not an expression of your essence, but a strategy to survive disconnection. This is the heartbreak and the liberation of inner child work. You realize the you that you've spent years performing was a mask, and underneath it lives a self that was never broken, just buried. But uncovering that self takes courage, because the protective beliefs we built also feel familiar. Even if they hurt us, they've kept us from the chaos of the unknown. That's why rewriting them isn't about forcing positivity. It's about gentle disidentification. Instead of saying, "I'm unworthy of love," you learn to say, "I believed I was unworthy of love because I wasn't emotionally seen." That small shift, from identity to observation, is where healing begins. You are not your wound. You are the one witnessing the wound, and when you become the witness, you gain choice. You can choose to rewrite the scripts. Let me show you how. Take the belief, "I must be perfect to be loved." Where did it come from? A critical parent, conditional praise, a fear of punishment. Now ask yourself, does that belief serve you? Or has it made love feel exhausting, something you have to perform for, rather than receive freely? Now say, "That belief was once my shield, but today I choose to believe I am worthy of love as I am," and repeat it, over and over, until it feels less foreign. Repetition is how the wound was formed. Repetition is how it will be unformed. Another example. "My emotions are too much." Who told you that? Who rolled their eyes when you cried? Who dismissed your needs? The belief came from a real wound, but it is not a universal truth. So say, "I was made to feel like a burden, but my emotions are valid. They deserve to be felt, not silenced." You are not gaslighting your pain. You are untangling it from your identity. Carl Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you truly are, not who you were trained to be. Individuation isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. It's looking at your patterns and saying, "I know where this came from, and now I get to choose differently." It's not easy. These beliefs were once your lifeline, but now they're your limitation. You don't have to rip them out all at once. You can peel them back gently, layer by layer, truth by truth. One day you'll set a boundary without guilt. Another day you'll rest without anxiety. Eventually you'll say no without needing to justify it. And you'll realize you've started to believe a new story. A story not rooted in fear but in self-worth. A story not written by survival but by sovereignty. Because here's the truth. You are not here to be who they needed. You are here to be who you truly are. And the beliefs that pain built, they were never yours to begin with. Becoming whole again. Integration and emotional maturity. You've uncovered the wounds. You've seen the beliefs they built. You've begun to release them. But healing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering what was whole and gently bringing it back to the center of your life. Carl Jung believed that the ultimate goal of healing wasn't happiness or even peace. It was wholeness, not perfection, not becoming who the world wants, but becoming yourself, fully, consciously, compassionately. And that means learning to live with your wounds, not in spite of them. Most of us were taught to move on, to forget the past, to suppress what hurts and focus on success, on the future, on what's next. But the inner child doesn't heal through denial. She heals through integration. So what does that look like? Integration begins the moment you stop running. You stop pretending you were never hurt. You stop blaming yourself for how others failed to love you. You stop shrinking, performing, and pleasing in order to be accepted. Instead, you pause, you breathe. You say, "This pain existed, it shaped me, and now I choose to give it a new place in my life, one where it no longer controls me." This is emotional maturity. It's not about having no triggers. It's about seeing your triggers and meeting them with presence instead of panic. It's about recognizing when your inner child wants to scream, to shut down, to run away. And instead of judging her, you hold her hand. You say, "I see you. I hear you. You don't have to take over anymore. I'm here now." Integration means becoming your own parent, giving yourself the safety, patience, and care you once needed and never got. This doesn't mean you excuse the harm others caused. It means you stop letting that harm define you. You are no longer a child trapped in a reaction. You are an adult choosing your response. That's a sacred shift. You begin to rewrite your emotional map. You no longer feel compelled to fix everyone around you. You start saying no, not to hurt others, but to protect your peace. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop tying your worth to how much you give. You finally allow yourself to receive. And something surprising happens. You begin to soften. Not in weakness, but in truth. You're no longer bracing yourself against life. You're living it, fully present even with the cracks, because the cracks no longer scare you. They've become doorways to deeper knowing. Jung taught that healing doesn't come from avoiding darkness. It comes from entering it with a lantern. That lantern is your awareness, your willingness to see, your courage to feel, your choice to hold what hurts instead of hiding from it. When you do that over and over, day by day, you begin to reclaim your wholeness. You stop identifying only with the pain. You remember, I'm also the one who survived, the one who searched, the one who chose to heal. That is power. That is integrity. That is you coming home to yourself. And once you reach this point, the final step is to transmit differently. Because here's the truth. Pain passed down is pain that repeats. Pain transformed is pain that ends. You may not be a parent, but you have relationships. You have people who look to you, love you, learn from you. And the way you treat yourself shapes what you teach them. By healing yourself, you change what you pass forward. You become the presence you never had. You become the voice that says, it's okay to feel. It's safe to be imperfect. You are loved without needing to earn it. That, Neville, is legacy. And that's what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation. Not just becoming who you are, but becoming conscious of what you carry, so that what once wounded you becomes what now guides you. You are no longer just a product of your past. You are a participant in your healing. And from that place, your scars are no longer sources of shame. They become signs of transformation. You start to live with emotional dignity. You don't hide your story. You hold it, gently, courageously. You share it if and when you choose. And in doing so, you remind others, wholeness is not found by erasing the past. It's found by loving yourself through it. And when that happens, the voice of your inner child softens. She doesn't need to scream anymore. She knows she's finally home. The return to self, a quiet revolution of the heart. You've walked through memories that once silenced you. You've seen the shadows behind your reactions. You've listened to the voice of a child who never stopped asking for love. And now, you're not who you were before. You're someone who knows. There's a kind of quiet revolution that begins the moment you say, this pain does not define me, but it has something to teach me. You're not broken, you're layered, not fragile, but open. You've begun to look at your wounds not with judgment, but with reverence. And in doing so, you've done something incredibly rare in this world. You've chosen truth over denial, presence over numbness, compassion over performance. Carl Jung believed that when we turn toward what we once rejected, we begin the process of becoming whole. It's not easy. It's not fast, but it's real. You are no longer chasing love by abandoning yourself. You are no longer performing perfection while hiding your pain. You are learning the deepest art of all, self-reunion. This journey doesn't end here. Healing is not a destination, it's a devotion. But today you've taken a powerful step. You've faced what most people run from, and in that brave act, you've given permission to others to feel, to be honest, to begin. So if your chest feels tight, let it rise. If your eyes sting, let them water. You're not unraveling, you're unfolding. And if you ever forget this, if the old shame creeps back in, if the world asks you to be smaller than you are, remember, the child inside you is no longer alone. You're here now. And that changes everything. Before you go, if this message spoke to your heart, leave a comment below. What's one thing your inner child would say to you if you listened? Let's open a space of healing together, and if you're ready to deepen this journey, I've prepared a special self-love ebook for you, crafted with care, not fluff. It's waiting for you in the pinned comment. And don't forget to subscribe, because your healing deserves consistency. You deserve to be reminded of your worth again and again, until it's no longer a question, but a knowing. Thank you for watching. Thank you for feeling, and most of all, thank you for choosing to come home to yourself. See you in the next video.